Today, we're jumping into something really fascinating. Theurgy. It's this incredible, ancient system of ritual and philosophy that tried to answer one of the biggest questions we've ever asked. I mean, really think about that. Can you, just through your own intellect, through pure contemplation, actually bridge that huge gap between our messy physical world and the perfect, divine source of everything? That was the big question, the central dilemma, for a group of ancient philosophers we call the Neoplatonists. Okay, so let's get into this dilemma. The Neoplatonists had this idea that the human soul comes from a divine place, but it's fallen. It's descended way down into the material world. And for them, that wasn't just a philosophical problem, it was a cosmic one. Right, so a key thinker here, a philosopher named Iamblichus, back in the 3rd century, he really felt this problem deeply. He believed the soul, once it was in a human body, was just way too far down the cosmic ladder. There was this vast ontological distance between us and the gods. You know, it's like we're stuck in the basement of the universe trying to shout up to someone on the penthouse floor. Now, before Iamblichus, philosophers like Plotinus, a real giant of Neoplatonism, he thought the answer was pure thought, or theoria. The idea was you could literally think your way back to the divine through intense contemplation. But Iamblichus, he came along and basically said, nope, not going to work. For a soul that's actually trapped in a body, just thinking isn't nearly powerful enough to make that incredible journey home. So if you can't think your way back, what do? Well, Iamblichus didn't just point out the problem, he offered a solution. A really practical, ritual-based system that he called Theurgy. And that name is so important. The Theurgia literally means divine working or divine art. And this is the key insight. Theurgy isn't about humans doing things to the gods. It's an art that invites the gods to work through us, to lift our souls way beyond the limits of our everyday rational minds. And it's so important not to confuse this with what we'd call magic or sorcery. They saw Theurgy as supernatural. It was the gods themselves in action. Sorcery, on the other hand, was just a human trying to manipulate nature for their own ends. The goal of Theurgy wasn't to, get a promotion or win the lottery. It was about elevating the soul itself. And it didn't rely on your willpower. It required divine grace. A totally different ballgame. So you're probably wondering, how does this divine art actually work? Well, the mechanics of it are maybe the wildest part of the whole system. It all comes down to these things called synthemata. The best way to think about synthemata is as divine passwords or cosmic tokens. The Neoplatonists believed that the creator god, the demiurge, had hidden these secret symbols all throughout creation. They're like the hidden signature of the divine, stamped onto everything in the universe. And these symbols could be almost anything. They might be physical things, like a specific kind of stone or a particular herb. They could be complex numerical formulas. Or, and this is my favorite, they could be what are called voces mysticae. These were mystical sounds, chants that had absolutely no literal meaning. They weren't words, they were pure sound symbols. And that's the whole point, right here. Theurgy was designed from the ground up to be a series of ineffable acts that transcend all intellection. It's a system built to work in a way that goes far beyond what our rational minds can even grasp. So how do they work? This is what's so cool. You don't analyze them. You don't try to understand them with your brain. Their power, their divine dunamis, acts directly. It's recognized instantly by that little divine spark inside your own soul and by the gods themselves. It's a direct connection like a key fitting into a lock, and it completely bypasses your conscious thinking mind. So you have all this ritual, all these symbols, these mystical chants, but where is it all going? What's the final destination? Well, the ultimate goal of the Theurgy is nothing less than the salvation and, get this, the deification of the soul. It's about achieving what they called henosis, a perfect union with the divine. And not after you die. The goal was to do it right here, right now, while you're still living in a physical body. It's a complete spiritual transformation. The name for this journey home is epistrophe. It means a return or a reversion. See, the Neoplatonists believed every single soul has this natural drive to return to where it came from. Theurgy was just the way to put a turbo booster on that process. It's a sacred technology designed to speed up the soul's homecoming. This table just lays it all out so perfectly. Let's walk through it. You start with Theurgia, the divine working itself, which is what philosophy was missing. How does it work?
through the synthemata, those cosmic passwords that bypass your brain. What is the process? It's epistrophe, the great return journey of the soul. And where does it all lead? To henosis, that perfect, blissful fusion with the divine, where you finally realize the one that was hidden inside you all along.
Now, you'd think a system this ancient, this, let's be honest, this weird, would just fade into history, right? But you would be wrong. Theurgy's ideas had this incredibly long and surprising afterlife, shaping belief systems for hundreds and hundreds of years. So after Iamblichus kicks things off, a couple centuries later you get the philosopher Proclus, who basically declares Theurgy to be the absolute peak of all philosophy. But then its ideas start to leak out into totally different worlds. Early Christian thinkers start to adapt and absorb its concepts. And then fast forward nearly 1,000 years later, and it has this massive comeback, fueling the mystical fires of the Renaissance. Yeah, during the Renaissance, all these thinkers who were obsessed with Hermeticism and magic, they rediscovered Theurgy. And why? Because it gave them a sophisticated, ancient framework for having direct, visionary, ecstatic experiences. Its whole focus on divine symbols gave them a language to explore what they called the imaginal world, this very real, in-between reality, somewhere between the physical world and the purely divine. But maybe the most surprising twist of all is how early Christian intellectuals, especially this super influential writer known as Dionysius the Areopagite, took the language of Theurgy. I mean, they took this pagan system and repurposed it to describe the divine works of Christ. They used its logic to explain how Christian sacraments, like the Eucharist, could create a real, tangible union between a person and God. It's just a wild, profound synthesis of ideas. And all of this kind of brings us back to where we started, but with a modern twist. The Theurgy was a system built entirely to go beyond the intellect, to reach for a kind of truth that you could never find in a spreadsheet or an algorithm. So it leaves us with a pretty big question for our own time, doesn't it? In our age that's so driven by data and by logic, what is the value of seeking an experience that lies completely beyond reason?